Today, we're diving into the art of creating a luxury experience that customers can't resist and that are willing to pay a premium for. So my guest today is Maxim Martin, who took a bold leap from the digital world to the physical service industry, building a luxury London spa from scratch. In just 2 years, his business, Seven Bali Spa, has become the highest priced non-hotel spa in the city. And he's here today to share some inside secrets on monetizing customer service, building an incredible team culture, and leading like a true CEO. So if you're ready to learn how to elevate your business and make your customer feel like royalty, this episode's for you. So thank you very much for joining me. Welcome to Mindset Mavericks.
Nice to connect with you, John. Thank you for having me.
So I did touch on it in the introduction there, but you went from a very different industry into the real world service-driven industry of a spa owner. So can you tell us a little bit about how you did that transition and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in university, I lived in Cyprus, and I've only moved to London 2 years ago to start to launch the spa. My experience with running a digital agency, was in SEO and copywriting. Was that the industry very often change, and you're competing against essentially the whole world. And I'm a true believer in a more brick and mortar business where you know that you have bets on the left and bets on the right, and you control and feel the markets a little bit better because you are in a city. And so when I realized that working digitally is something great for the short term, but not very sustainable in the long run, me and some of my partners have come together with launching a spa here in the center of London. It took about a year and a half to get it from concept to finally opening on the first day. And we're all very happy with it. I've since made an exit from all of my digital projects and fully invested in the spa. We're planning to open a second outlet later next year.
But yeah, it's fantastic. And it is quite a change, especially, like I say, it's such a digital world now. It seems like an unusual choice to switch that around. So I know you said you've got a belief in that bricks and mortar, but where's that come from? What made you decide to buck the trend?
I think the big first idea that came was before ChatGPT launched in 2022, there were some hints that AI is going to be a little bit bigger than what people anticipated, and it's going to grow quite fast. And most people that are in the digital industry, they have a very strong dependence on the platform that they're on. For me, it was Google. Anything SEO related was just up to Google. And over the time, it showed that you're relying on organic traffic, which essentially means you are producing content without paying for advertisement, you show on the top of the page. It's up to Google what goes up and what goes down. And while the parameters for it are certainly for this year, for next year, Google at any point can flip the switch and make it completely different, which is exactly what happened last year when Google has created their AI-generated answers for questions that you have. And thousands of people that had businesses structured around answering people's questions have got out of business in a day because AI does it better, faster, more accurate, and more user-friendly. And that's just not the change that I anticipate with a more brick-and-mortar business, especially something that has to do with customer service. People are really looking for a human-to-human interaction, and that warmth, I don't see it being replaced by anything new, at least in the next 20
Like I
years.
say, I think that's one of the things that can't be replaced is that just human connection. And I'm really interested to get into that just in a few minutes, but I'm quite intrigued. You said you exited all the digital projects you had on your agency. And is that where the funds came from to start up the spa?
No, very much not. The turnover and the numbers in the digital world that I had was a lot less than what we are doing right now. The funds for the London Spa project came from various places. We have a loan and a mortgage. My family has invested quite a lot of this. Part of the exit has also been contributed to it. We have other partners as well that are not managing partners, but they are just on the backside with taking some decisions. Just for scale, the turnover that I had when running a business myself without any other shareholders, the turnover that I've made in in a year is what we do in a week right now. So the numbers are very,
significant.
very different.
Okay, and like I say, it's quite a vastly different area they're working in now. So in terms of moving to bricks and mortar and customer service in-person business, what are some of the biggest surprises that you found?
I think one of the biggest challenges and most interesting experiences is building a team from scratch. When you're running a digital agency, and lots of people can relate to this, that had any kind of freelancing experience, hiring is quite straightforward. You can get anyone from Colombia to Pakistan to Australia to Canada, go on a website like Upwork, get a non-fixed contract with them for as long as you like. At the moment that you have a change and you take a break from them, or the business is not doing well, you're doing some cuts, it's very easy to organize. You just let the person know, because you are freelance, you've got a freelance relationship, that you're taking a 2-month break and you reach out when you have more work. When you're running a brick and mortar business, you need to build a team that will be there and you're responsible for it. And lots of perhaps unexpected costs that are not related to the freelance world come up, such as paying for their insurance, having a separate team that works on accounts and another team that works in marketing. You can't have one person do everything. So I think building a team is the biggest change when you go into the real world.
And have you got some tips or tricks for hiring right people, particularly when it is looking at high-end customer service? What things can you offer or insights can you give us to make sure you get the right people in the right place?
Yes, I think one of the best approaches to take is to assume that you're not very good at hiring people. Everybody that I've talked to that are CEO consider themselves to be fantastic HR people, and they think they hire great employees. And anyone I ask that, they say the same thing. They say, we don't hire bad employees. But if you go down the main road of Oxford Street and you walk into different stores, 7 out of 10 of them will have people that are quite incompetent in what they're doing. And then comes the logical question: if nobody is hiring incompetent people, why would they work everywhere? And the conclusion is that people really overestimate their ability to understand a person through a couple of interviews, assume how well they're going to perform in the business. Sometimes you hire the right person, but your business pivots, and then the position that you hired the person for is not the same. And you hire the person to be a receptionist who will generate sales, and suddenly you're no longer looking for sales. Sales are coming at you. You need to produce great customer service. The very important approach is to assume that you're not very good at hiring. What you can do with that approach is that always have a probation period. That most of the time, I think the minimum probation period should be 3 months, and you should always let the person you're hiring know that very likely you're going to extend it to 6 months. Especially as a young business, you're going to change so much. It's like a child when they're growing. The growth in the early years is so much faster than when you're already established and you're in the industry for 10 years. And it's important to be ethical. It's important to be upfront with your employees, but it's also important to have an exit strategy in case the person that you hired for is not suitable for your business. Because at the end of the day, if you're running a business as business and you're running a business for profit, you need to make sure that the team around you are capable, are competent, and are flexible to adapt to the business needs. And that takes time to figure out.
in terms of having the right people in the right place, and you say about essentially getting rid of people if they're not the right fit and having those probationary periods, what do you do to ensure that it is actually it's the wrong person, wrong job, and it's not due to lack of training or anything else which is influencing their poor performance?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the approach that I take is giving people time. You hear a lot of people say that it's best to hire with the assessment of soft skills and to teach the people the hard skills. And in my experience, like you very correctly said, sometimes bad performance is due to lack of training, because most people can be taught, or customer service can be taught pretty much anything that the business requires. Where seems to be the biggest challenge in employee development would be soft skills. And what I personally found is that very often the first impression you have people and the first way that they present themselves in the first month or two changes as they get more familiar to the company culture. So the person that you hired and that you worked with in the first month may be quite different to the person that is with you on the fourth and fifth month. And that's due to various factors, from the person being a little bit more comfortable to, in some places, not everybody, in some places, not having to try so hard because they have already proven something. And the worst thing you can face as an employee is to hire someone and then see that their output is 110% and say, okay, this person is great. He's going to be with us forever. And 1 month down the line, that person's output is 50% because they've already proven and they have nothing left to prove. So it's really important to keep people motivated, to keep looking if their soft skills match the company culture, and to give them sufficient training. So I don't think there's an ideal way to assess that. What you have to do is you have to be inside the business and just have a feel for it. That's my approach.
It's an interesting point, and I think one of the things that is missed frequently is you get those high performers, who are performing at 110%, and sometimes that performance drops off because seeing other people operating at 60% and nothing's done about it. So I think it's just getting that right balance between performance training and making sure you take care of everyone and not just focusing on those lower performing people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually if you are able to make a positive company culture, which is not motivating, I think that's a great way to not ever see something like that.
And what things do you put in place to ensure there's a positive company culture in your workplace?
There are a couple of things which work particularly well for me. This one in particular is not quite my idea. I've adapted it from Disney's approach. Disney, the amusement parks, not the video production. They have something that they call a culture compass, or something similar to it. And then I've done a play on it, and we developed a company culture compass. And essentially, instead of just what lots of companies do, putting one mission statement, we've put a couple. And then we just designed it onto a compass. And then if people have access to a couple of staples of what the company believes in, that helps get a gist of how people act. For example, one of our statements on the company culture compass is that every employee has the personal phone number of every single member of the management. So, and they could contact them at any time. Now, whether they reply or not depends, because if we get a message 2 a.m., we may have our phone off, but we do encourage people to reach out to the relevant manager directly, not go through a huge chain of command. And what we found that really helped with is whenever there is a conflict between employees which are on the same level, for example, housekeepers, and maybe the younger housekeeper is being slightly bullied by the a slightly older housekeeper, and they can then reach out to the management and talk about it. But without such an approach, potentially what would happen is that person would quit, or that person would try to reach us through, let's say, a receptionist, which is a step above them, but would never end up reaching us, would essentially quit, and then would have a lot of costs with having to hire and train a new person who eventually could go through the same route. That direct contact solves one of these problems, and maybe a couple similar ones as well.
No, I really like that approach, and it is quite different. Quite frequently, what you will see is quite a hierarchy within organizations, and it is just speak to your line manager, don't speak to people above, and it tends to be fed up the chain. So do you see any disadvantages from having that method where anyone can contact you?
I think it depends on the size of the company. I think if you're under 100 employees, you can definitely get away with having anyone being able to contact you. The moment that you transition into size, which is somewhat bigger, I think you should switch from phone number to email. That way, the implied response time is allowed to be longer. And what company that I know of does is, instead of a direct contact, they have a letterbox which you can anonymously put either wishes or complaints or things that staff are unhappy about, or suggestions for improvement to the client. And once a month, the board of directors comes together and reads that. So obviously, depending on whatever business you run, depending on the people that work with you, depending on your own tolerance to be able to talk to 100 people, or maybe you want to limit yourself to just 3 subordinates that are around you. There are different approaches to this, but I think one aspect of a positive company culture is that if a person is in a position where they need to pass a message across, there should be multiple points of contact, because the worst thing that can happen is the person that you have to pass the message through is a person that you have a problem with.
I think that's fantastic. And I think we've touched on customer service, but what's some of the key elements of exceptional customer service that justify premium pricing? What is it that can set apart a customer service that attracts a higher price point?
I think there are many layers to this, and I think it really depends on your industry. Specifically in the service industry, things like hotels, restaurants, spas, even dental care clinics, car rental spaces. There is a way that you can monetize customer service, and I think a lot of businesses overlook that. Depending on the specifics of the business, there are very different ways you can improve customer service. But I think if there was one thing that I had to pass across, which I believe in, is that customer service is not just being polite to your customers and maybe the receptionist smiling and opening the door for them. Customer service is about the comfort of your customer journey from the very first interaction until the very last one. If your website is designed for an easy checkout and you don't need to put in your email whenever you want to book something, that is an aspect that clients value because it's easy. So that is actually an aspect of customer service. If the delivery method is not just an email and you can send them a physical gift card for whatever service it is that you're buying, that is a nice way you can charm a client into going a little bit above and beyond. And that's also an element of customer service. Obviously, these things, they cost money. To optimize a website costs thousands of pounds. To make free delivery of a gift card rather than email costs maybe £5 per time. But you can make an upfront from that. A lot, by quite a significant amount.
So yeah, for entrepreneurs who are just starting out and they want to start building reputation for 5-star customer service, what ways do you think they can do that on a budget? I know you've mentioned about the website and things, but are there some simple tips that you would advise people to think about from those beginning?
I think it's really important to understand the segment that you're working with. If you're going there are two ways that you can monetize customer service. Either you can charge double for your service. For example, at our spa, we charge £137 per hour. We have a spa that is 75 meters east of us, and they charge £60 per hour. The quality of massage that we and they do is relatively similar. We have perhaps a bit of an advantage because we have our own school of massage in Bali, and we get people on a skilled worker visa from Bali to come to us. But for an average person, if they if they get blindfolded and they get a massage with us, and then they get a massage with them, they won't see much of a difference. So that's the first strategy. We have 100 different ways that we monetize customer service, and then we get to charge more than double. The other way is keeping the same prices, but using customer service as an investment into customer retention. It's a lot cheaper to get the same client that you already had to buy again, to come back, than it is to advertise on Google to get a brand new client. It's also a lot cheaper from an operational point of view. Usually customers that have been with you the first time will spend less time asking the receptionist questions, will spend less time, depending on what industry you're in, let's say in a restaurant, will even spend less time eating at your restaurant if they've been there. Therefore, you have a higher turnaround tables. And that's the second method. So you try to charm your clients with comfort, with high quality service, with things that don't cost more than 5-10% of your initial product. And you're hoping that through that you get a customer retention that's a lot better.
So with your spa, using that as an example, what are some of the touches that people might get at your spa that they wouldn't get at another spa which is in the vicinity?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, because I think that what we do can be copied in quite a lot of different industries. So the rule that we take is that anything that we do to charm our clients should not cost more than 10% of the treatment price. So I'm a firm believer that the profit margin is really, really important. And just through volume, you can't run a business. There are too many geopolitical or economic factors that can, at some point, make your profit margins smaller, and then you're out of business. It's really important that whatever it is that you're doing, you don't spend more than what your business should allow you. So the first thing that we do that I think really excels our customer service experience is we have a very wide selection of drinks and snacks that we offer free of charge. And we also have an alcohol license, and we give our clients an unlimited amount of any drink that they like. Per glass, the cost is very high, but we found that less than 30% of our clients actually accept the offer of having a drink as their treatment. But the fact that we always offer whiskey or prosecco or a selection of wines elevates our status in a way. People assume that they are in a much more luxurious place than perhaps a place that doesn't do that. So if you're able to come up with something that you can offer to clients that maybe not everybody will take, but is high-end. For example, some hotels offer black caviar with on pancakes. Less than 10% of people even like that. But the fact that you're having breakfast at a place that serves you black caviar is incredibly luxurious. That's one thing that you can do. The other thing is, depending on the kind of service that you do, you can just find that cute thing that is very Instagrammable. When we do pedicure for our clients, we put in rose petals inside the water. And other businesses just don't do that. And that way a person can take pictures. Also, we have a little wall, which is made by this Italian designer, and it's really beautiful. In another spa that my family member of mine runs in Switzerland, they hung up a grand piano on the wall. And it is an investment in customer service as well, because people like to take photos of it. It's unique. So finding that uniqueness. And the third and final thing, which I think goes without saying, is really training staff in in being able to work with VIP clients, for lack of a better word. So when a client comes in, you need to be standing. If it's winter time, you need to help the person take off their top layer, and before they leave, help them put it back on, offer them a seat, walk them to the treatment room, and meet them at the treatment room to take them back to reception. Never leave them by themselves. Open doors for them. And although it sounds like very obvious stuff, it actually takes quite a lot of training and dedication to get it right. And 8 out of 10 places, even some 5-star hotels that you walk into, won't get it right. And whenever that high value client finds a place that gets it right, that means a lot to them.
Yeah, no, some great tips in there. I really like it. And I think, just like I say, just elevating that experience and making it more than just, for example, when Blockbuster used to be around and used to be able to go and hire a film, it's about that whole experience, about walking around, choosing the film, choosing what snacks and things you want. I know it's quite a different level of industry, but it's just that whole experience that you're just adding some value to it without actually having to spend much money on it.
Yeah, I was going to say absolutely. That's a great example. And another great example is high-end restaurants. People don't go to high-end restaurants to eat. They go there for the experience. They want to go into this magical place which serves something interesting on a plate, which comes with a beautiful presentation, and the waiter talks politely to them. Nobody's going to order takeaway from a high-end restaurant, which shows that they don't go there for the food. Just like you said, people don't necessarily go to Blockbuster to watch the movie. They go there because it's the States-like environment. People don't go for massage just for that. They want an hour or two of heaven outside of the hectic world. It's important to understand what you're selling, because very often you're not just selling the product, you're selling something else that comes with it.
One of the things I'm interested about is around the pricing. And I know you said that it's significantly higher than some of the places around you. Did you start off at that higher price point, or is it something you've done gradually over time?
We were very cautious about how high we can charge. It's the first time we launched in London. We have experience with running a spa in Zurich, and there we also charge quite high. I think just as high as we do in London right now. But we weren't sure how the market is going to take it here in the UK. The other spas that I visited prior to the launch didn't have anything crazy. There's a spa at Trafalgar Square that charges £99 an hour, and they're pretty good. Hotel spa go crazy, but that's just because they can, because tourists, they are a different segment. Their willingness to pay is incredibly high, but it's very unreliable to run a spa in a hotel. So we're a little bit worried from one side to overprice, and then people are going to think, what are you guys, crazy or something? And they'll come to us. But from the other side, if we don't price high enough, and in the future we raise the price, we go through this horrible process of losing clients. And it was really hard for us to find the balance. What we did is we matched our highest price competitor, and we started with £99. We tried to be a little bit creative, and we said 124 crossed out, 99 launch season, and launch season lasted a year. And after that, eventually we thought, no, we can definitely charge more than that. We do a much better job than anyone else. And we went to not 124, but 170. And then when the underground had those strikes in April and May of 2023, they put the prices up. We kind of matched that, and we thought it was quite logical. Well, the underground are raising prices. I think lots of businesses will follow. We could be the first. And we put it up to 124 as we initially promised. And then from this year, we push it up to 137, and probably next year we'll push it up to 149, and we'll probably stop there for quite a while.
Yeah. And in terms of objections, do you get much objections when it is vastly different to surrounding areas?
100%. And if you're going down the approach of charging high, you have to be comfortable with not accepting clients because of the price point. like I said previously, it's very important to understand the segment that you're working with. There is such a thing as the wrong client in the segment. If somebody comes in and they don't have the willingness to spend, which we charge, we shouldn't fight for that client, unfortunately. We should try to give them the best possible customer service, and then not necessarily fight for them. So we do get quite a lot of that. And what I personally found, and I think you may find it interesting, John, is that actually rejecting the client in a correct way also proves to be a fantastic way of gaining customers. Because there's something, a great example of that is in construction. If you're talking about the satisfaction that you get from, or the expected satisfaction that you get from a service, if you imagine it as a graph, once you agree to, let's say, renovating your apartment, your level of expectation is here, it's very high. And then as time goes by and eventually the construction is over, whatever the end result, usually it's slightly less than that. Let's say it's down. So the reason I'm saying that is if you reject the client before they make the sale, their level of satisfaction is not low just yet. So they may go somewhere cheaper. They may not have the best experience. And their assumption will be, well, that other place charges a lot more, and I wasn't willing to pay that much. But now that my experience has not been that great, maybe I should go back to the place that I rejected because of their high price point. And their expectation will be relative to the price that we should be a lot better.
And in terms of attracting new clients, what things do you do to entice the right customers in?
We're quite simple when it comes to attracting clients. Our location really helps us. We are based just off the street, about a 10-minute walk from Selfridges. We have two underground stations next to us. So roughly 60% of our clients are walk-ins or just people that live or work nearby. After that, we have Google Ads, and we bid quite high on the keywords that we found work. We're quite simple when it comes to that. For us, the biggest value is retaining customers rather than gaining new ones. And gaining new ones is more time gain. The longer we are on the market, the more new people will gain. So we're quite light in terms of marketing.
And what are the next steps for your spa? 'Cause you say you're doing good business at the moment. It's profitable. It's making significantly more than you were in your digital business previously. So what are the next steps for Seven Bali Spa?
Yes, that's right. So we're doing something that any business book would discourage you from doing. We are expanding into a second location. I don't recommend doing that if your business is doing well. If we have everything sorted out, our systems are working well, our customers are happy, our managers are doing their job, and we have a stable team and we don't have a high turnaround. But if we're playing by the book, we should settle down and make a great experience for our customers and be remunerated for it financially. Instead, we want to expand and we want to have a second outlet, and we are actually buying the unit rather than renting this time, and we're hoping to open next year in Battersea. The reason we're doing that is because we just have a very high belief in that what we bring to the market is quite special, and we are very confident in our success. From a risk assessment point of view, it's perhaps not the best decision, but we're very optimistic.
Which brings me on to the next chapter I want to speak about, which is as your role as a CEO and what a CEO should be. Because, like I say, it's challenging. You open a second location, and that brings with it a whole load of new challenges. So what do you see as your role as CEO?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think depending on the stage at which your business is at, the role that a CEO plays should be quite different. I think when you're just starting a business, the CEO or the founder or whoever is most in charge should really be on the front lines and do everything with everything. And slowly as you grow as a company, you should have the skill of either outsourcing or delegating tasks. So I think like in the first year of launching your company, um, the CEO should be the receptionist to the cleaner, the manager, the marketing person, the decision-making person. They should be in 7 places at once. And over time, you delegate the cleaners to the cleaners. They trust the receptionists more as they train them and they have systems. And eventually, you should reach a stage in which you are obviously still involved as much as possible, but you should be doing as little as possible in terms of operational things. And it's very important to understand where that's coming from. That should not come from a point of, let's say, laziness. You should still be competent and know how to do these things because whatever business you run, if your employee quits tomorrow, you'll need to train the new person. You should be able to rely on your skill set to do it. But the reason it's important to take a step back is because if you are, let's say, if you're running a hotel and you're at reception every day dealing with clients, you'll never be able to see the picture from a little bit from far away. And that's really important. An example of that is, I'll give an example from our spa. We have this alcohol that we're offering to clients and that I mentioned before. And we always offered it after the treatment. After the treatment is over, a client comes out and we say, would you like a glass of Prosecco or wine or whiskey? And when in our company, we reached a stage that myself and some of my partners were able to just take a step back, we noticed that that's actually a very bad idea to offer it after the treatment. We should offer it before the treatment. The reason for it is because the client makes the judgment whether they liked us or whether they didn't like us, whether we're worth the payment or whether we're not worth the payment. Not after the treatment is over, but maybe in the first 10 minutes of when it started. So if we mention our unique selling point, which is that we're offering drinks, snacks, and alcohol free of charge, the client should be aware about it before they make that decision. After they've made that decision, we can offer them a bottle of champagne and they won't care because they'll think that whatever we're charging is unfair. It's not possible to notice these thin details when you're in the middle. If you are dealing with a client and running reception, answering calls, it's not possible to get it right. But if you have the time and the real estate in your brain to observe it, you will eventually come up with conclusions that may look small, but actually very fundamental for the success of a business.
Not say it's just those 1% differences and the compounding effect that has if you're doing that week on week and just those small little tweaks. And the next question I'm going to ask is really in 2 parts. And I want to find out what some of the biggest challenges were when you went into business, the planning stages, and to getting the spa set up, and how those compare to being leader of the company now 2 years on.
Do you mean prior to when we opened or like in the beginning stages?
So yeah, just those early stages, what some of those biggest challenges were that you faced.
Yeah, I think building a team, like I slightly mentioned before, is a lot more challenging than perhaps I expected. It's so important to find the right manager, somebody who's passionate about what they're doing, somebody who truly cares. It's really important to go through a certain learning curve, such as just because you, for example, hire for a position and you pay 10% more than what the market pays. That completely does not guarantee quality. That just means you're overpaying the person. And while you have a bigger segment of people that you can choose from, it's still entirely up to you to pick the right person and train them correctly, keep them motivated. So just because you're paying somebody more completely doesn't mean that the output will be better. This and a couple of other team lessons that probably are most difficult when it comes to launching any company. Even if you've been through the process multiple times, a new team comes with a different set of challenges. And then compared to right now, what we're trying to do the most is figure out to sustain our growth. the systems that we established when we had 12 hours of massage per day are completely different to right now when we have close to 50 hours of massage per day. The same way how if a restaurant opened and they had 10 tables on the weekend, that is busy versus when they're fully booked out. Every second counts, accent on customer service, and maybe talking to the clients a little bit more goes out of the window because you have another 3 people queuing. And so we're trying to look for ways, how can we still maintain the same level of luxury, but not deliver a worse product to the client. So I think, right now what we're mostly working on is systems that are more up to date to sustain the current size of the business.
So you mentioned about keeping consistency a number of times already in levels of service. So do you put much focus on standard operating procedures for the day-to-day operation of the business and customer focus? How much emphasis do you put on operating procedures for that?
Yeah, so we take an approach that works for us. So I think it's very important for anyone running a business in the customer service industry to find an approach that works best for their business and their team. We focus on 2 aspects mainly. The first one are measurable factors from things like the level of sound in the treatment rooms. So we have, let's say, a device that measures it in hertz, and we walk in every morning and we see, is the music playing at the right level? Lighting is the same. Sometimes light bulbs before dying, they just go duller, and it makes the visual aspect of the of the spa a lot worse. So again, we have a device and we walk around that and we see if everything is lit up correctly. The moisture level, again, we're quite picky with these things. So everything that you can measure, we try to measure, and we have an Excel sheet of what it's supposed to be and to which threshold we should change it. And that makes a difference. Also, smells and things like that. You can't maybe measure them with a device, but you can definitely walk in, let's say, to a spa, and if you notice the scent of essential oils, that's a good thing compared to when you walk. And then the other thing that we put an emphasis on is always having somebody who is not busy doing things and is busy overseeing things. So in our case, it's a manager. If it's a kitchen, that would be a head chef, or if it's a dental clinic, perhaps even the receptionist will oversee things that the dentist is doing. And that leads to an improvement in systems and customer service, because from the side, you can just tell that a little bit better when the way that the person answered the phone call is slightly off, if a certain interaction didn't go too well. We then record it, and every week we dissect it and see if we can develop a better system to improve it.
I love some of the attention to details you're making at the spa, especially around sound levels as well, because I love massage, go fairly frequently, and just those little ambient noises and other things can be off-putting. It does diminish the experience, so it's great that you're putting so much attention to detail to it.
Yeah, the devil's in the detail, as I say.
Yeah. So many of our listeners are just starting out in business. What would you give them as a piece of advice for building resilience?
I think it's very important to understand the level of work that comes into running the business. A fantastic book that I would perhaps recommend reading is the E-Myth. It explains very well the difference between loving what you do and doing it as a business. Because the example that the book gives is if you want to open your own bakery because you're an excellent baker, you have to also keep in mind that you will need to deal with purchases and accountants and hiring and firing and mortgages. And if you're eventually getting bigger with budget management. I think the most frequent piece of advice that I give to people that are just starting a business would be to keep a very close eye on the profit margin. If your profit margin is less than 10%, you should not be sleeping well at night. It is a catastrophe if it's 10% or less. The reason the profit margin is important is unless you have unlimited capital behind your back, eventually something in the world will happen that will eat your profit margin, and you should have space in order to keep afloat and stay afloat. For example, if the VAT level goes up, and that has happened in many countries across the world, just the general reception, your product going out of trend, your cost going up because your highest paid employee is starting a family and they need to leave on maternity. You need somebody else to cover that reduced productivity that's now coming from the person. All these things will eat into your profit margin. And if it's only 10%, eventually things can be fine for a long time, but it's a guarantee that eventually there will come a day and you'll start losing money. And that's a very dangerous space for business. So keep your profit margin below 10%, below 15% if possible. If it goes below, do something about it. It's a big problem.
Can just reiterate exactly what you've said. I've had a product business and shipping costs have multiplied by more than 5 times during COVID.
Yeah.
And it's just not being too rigid and not being afraid to pivot as well. I think people can get quite rigid in their practices and try and stay in their lane, but sometimes actually the best thing is to pivot and just try and update frequently, make sure you're on the right lines.
Most certainly that's the case. And when the shipping goes up by 5 times, you can't just stop shipping product because you're still renting the warehouse, you're still renting the storage space, you still have people on your monthly bill that expect to receive their next salary. So it's not just about, stopping the shipment and waiting for it to go down. It's about covering the everyday costs to keep the business alive. If you no longer have a profit margin, it's a problem.
We're just going to move into a bit of a quick fire round, which is last 4 questions I've got for you. And I think you may have just answered one already. So I was going to ask you, what is one book that's had the biggest influence on you? Would you stick with the one you've just mentioned, or is there any others that you think of?
I think I would change to a more personal one. I think a great book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think to run a successful business, it's very important to be able to be consistent, to be able to believe in what you do and do it day in and day out. And one of the key ideas in Atomic Habits is to, a great way to build a habit is to identify as the person that does this and that. In my case, I identified as the person that wakes up at whatever time it is that I set up to wake up in the morning. And the first thing that they do is go to work and they stay there until you. And whether it's that or anything else that you want to improve in a personal aspect or in a business aspect, I think that book is a great read to help you with the journey.
Well, I'm glad to say I'm about halfway through it. It's currently on my bedside table. So yeah, looking forward to finding out a bit more. And
pleasure to hear.
And is there one particular habit that you've got that sets you up each day to help with your mindset?
I think waking up early is incredibly helpful. The evening hours are so much less productive than the morning hours. If you're able to wake up at 5 a.m. every day, that's fantastic. If you have family and if you have other commitments that doesn't let you do that, I try to wake up at 6 a.m. If that's not still possible, try to wake up at 7 a.m. But the earlier you wake up, the more productive hours in a day that you will have, because the output from 6 to 10 p.m. is 10 times worse than from 6 to 10 a.m. So wake up early.
And with that in mind, how do you balance work life with personal life?
I would probably not be the best person to answer that. I'm currently in the stage of life where I really enjoy what I do and I want to keep doing it. And similar to what we mentioned before about identification, I identify that the business and the personal life is the same. In Western culture, it's very important to keep that work-life balance, but I've spent a very large portion of my life living in Asia, and there, what you do is your life. And I personally don't mind that approach.
And I think that's the important thing. It's whatever's right for the individual. And some people love doing all the hours and spending all the time on the business, and that's perfectly fine too. So the next question would be, what's the biggest lesson in life or business that you wish you'd learned sooner?
That's a very interesting question, and I would answer it well. So I need to think for a second about it. Think again, not to sound super cliche, but failures are just a very natural part of the journey. A quote I personally like is that Edison, before he developed the light bulb, he failed a billion times, but he's remembered for the one time that he hasn't failed. And before I launched Seven Bali Spa with my partners, I had an agency which had 11 different directions, and 9 of those directions failed, lost a lot of money, and just 2 succeeded. So I think from one side, it's important to try things, and if they fail, try other things. From the other side, it's also very important not to hop from one project to another, from one to another, and try to commit to something once you see that it's when it's working. But if something doesn't work out, there's just failure is an absolutely normal part of what you're doing. You have to go through it, and as well, it's only failure if you don't learn.
Yeah. And is there something in particular you did learn from those failures? Is there something that sticks in your mind?
I think when it comes to managing a team, um, my sister also runs a spa in Switzerland. Some of the partners that are involved in our spa are also involved in first spa. And me and her have a very different approach to management. And I think that personally, what works really well for me is separating colleagues from friendships. It's incredibly different. Go for coffee with somebody that works for you, and next morning call them into your office and say that they've done a bad job and that they need to do better. And if they don't, their probation period will be over. And I think that, well, there are models that allow for that to be fine, such as the wonderful business that my sister is running, and she's a part of the team, and they're all like in it really well together. I think when it comes to maybe slightly larger businesses that need scaling, if you are too close to the people that you work with, it's going to affect your decision making and your ability to demand things of them. And that's a choice we personally have to make. Either we commit to running the business in the most profitable way and we make like this dragon out of it and we make it work 110%. But that comes with this interpersonal sacrifice where we can come close to the employees and maybe cross the friendship line. Or we don't take that route, but we have to be conscious about the fact that that's going to as simple as eat into our profit margin. So I think that's a pretty big lesson that I learned.
I think you've given us some fantastic insights today, and I've really enjoyed listening to how you can monetize that customer service experience, which you seem to be doing so well at Seven Bali Spa. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on. If anyone wants to find out a little bit more about you or about your spa, where can we find you?
I am currently not running any podcasts myself, but perhaps this is something that I will be doing in the future. But I would say that if anybody wants to check out our spa, we are located in Fitzrovia, and we are committed to making the best possible experience that is possible when it comes to massage and spa experience.
Fantastic. I'll put all the links to your spa, etc., in the show notes as well, just so people can find you easily. But thank you very much for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, John. This was fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.